What's going on, everyone? My name is Triforce Addiction. Welcome back to another COD mode video. So today, the Season 2 patch notes have officially been released to the public for all of us to see. And I guess for all of us to prepare, because there are quite a bit of good changes and some questionable ones, as well as some surprising changes as well. But yeah, the patch notes here, I'm actually ready to get like just through all of them, because all of them are very, very interesting. So starting off with the very first change is obviously to the weapon that just came out this season, which is the LW3 Tundra, which I know a lot of you guys could unanimously agree it is pretty overpowered. It's probably the strongest sniper that we have ever really received in this entire game, and it's kind of just taken over almost completely, I guess, the entire sniper category. Yes, so they did make some changes to the movement speed. They reduced it from 4.2 meters per second to 4.19 meters per second. The sprint speed reduction is also a thing. You know, they reduced it from 5.5 meters per second to 5.37 meters per second. And for the bandit stay stock, they also reduced the shoot to fire by 30% from 40%. So it used to be 40%, now it's 30%. So now for the Koshka, the only change that they made was a positive change, which is the sprint to fire being reduced from 240 milliseconds to 210 milliseconds. So now we move on to a gun that hasn't really been changed for a very long time, that of course being the R-Tec AMR. And obviously, given how it is right now, I don't really think there ever had to be a change. Of course, the reload time was one of those things that got changed over time drastically. I mean, it used to be way slower, but it looks like they are actually improving the empty reload time. Of course, this type of animation happens once you run out of ammo within the certain magazine. So it's going to reload a little bit faster when your mag is empty. Then that's basically all it's going to do. So now we move on to the Outlaw. This one is kind of a questionable change if you think about it, but if you think big picture, it may not be that much of a big change. They did basically reduce the ADS time down to like maybe 30 milliseconds. I think that's, if my math is correct. I haven't done math in forever, guys, so yeah, forgive me on that. But yeah, they made it a lot faster. But the reason why I think they did this was probably because of its first range. So as you guys know, they made a buff a while back, making it so that you could actually one shot to the stomach only in the first range. And of course, if you want to use any range extending attachments, yeah, you're gonna have to slow down your Outlaw a little bit. So this might have been changed, at least in terms of ADS speed, so that you won't lose too much speed when you are deciding to use like some sort of range extending attachment. And given that the LW3 Tundra is now a thing and it's super fast, yeah, the Outlaw has to keep up in some way, shape, or form. So now we got another change for another sniper. Of course, this is for the DLQ-33. They reduced the fire interval from 1200 milliseconds to 1170 milliseconds. Again, most likely because of the LW3 Tundra doing basically the same thing, but much faster. That's basically the pattern here with most of the snipers for Season 2. They're just trying to buff them up to make them as good as the LW3, which in reality, it's pretty stupid, given that you could just nerf the LW3 with its ADS speed, or do something to have more downsides for certain barrels that increase the fire rate. But yeah, I mean, that's not really the way I would go with, you know, adjusting these snipers because of a more powerful one. So the PDW-57 once again catches a nerf, but this time to its ADS movement speed as well as its bullet impact. So they reduced the ADS movement speed from 3.97 meters per second to 3.82 meters per second, which is, I don't really think it's that much of a big change. I mean, you guys could still use Skulkers, so I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. And they also reduced the bullet impact from 1 to, I guess, 0.9. Again, bullet impact in that capacity isn't really that great. It's not going to cause that much flinch anyway, so that change most likely won't even matter. So now we got another change for the Type 25. The stopping power reload mag size did get increased from 30 to 34 bullets, so it's slightly better now than it was before. Well, it's gonna be better. I mean, we're still in Season 1, but yeah, this is a change that I know a lot of people have been wanting to see, given the climate of the meta right now. The Type 25 has been slowly starting to decline a little bit in terms of lethality, and something like this does help the weapon significantly, even if it's by 4 bullets. So now we got another buff to the M13, because, I mean, we can't have a COD Mobile update without a buff to the M13, apparently. They improved the damage profile from 24-18-16 to 24-19-16. So this basically means the first headshot will now reduce shots to kill within the second range, and that's basically all they did. So the Striker 45 also did get a pretty good change. I know a lot of people don't look at this gun with favor. I mean, Bobby Plays, I think he gave it like the F tier or put it in one of the more like lower tiers, even though the weapon is actually pretty good. The range profile was increased by 3 meters within the second range. And also the stomach multiplier was also increased from 1 times to 1.1 times. So basically, if you do have any range extending attachments for the Striker, let's say I guess the heaviest barrel or just any other different type of suppressor, something like that, you're going to be able to 3-shot consistently, and even more so because of the multiplier buff above 20 meters. But again, it also depends on what type of range extending attachments you are using, because not all of them are going to get you to 20 meters. And also, this does explain why the Striker 45 legendary skin came out again. So yeah, I kind of had a feeling that, like, given that it's released again, I assumed that there was going to be a buff for next season. And yeah, we were right. So now we do have a list of 3, I guess, compound changes, given that these are all involving 3-shot weapons. So the Man of War headshot multiplier got increased from 1.1 times to 1.36 times. The EM2's headshot multiplier got increased from 1.1 times to 1.4 times. And for the DRH, the headshot multiplier increased from 1.3 times to 1.55 times. So this simply means that the Man of War, EM2, and the DRH are going to have 2-shot capability so long as you hit in the head. Of course, there are certain conditions, depending on what you use with some of these weapons, you're going to be able to, and sometimes you're not. So for example, the DRH, if you're not using the OTM mag, you're basically not going to be able to 2-shot to the head. They said it, like I actually calculated, they said it just enough for you to not get a 2-shot kill if you don't use the OTM. I think it was like 49.5 damage. So yeah, it's not going to be enough unless you use that specific attachment. The EM2, I kind of skimmed ahead, but I knew it was going to 2-shot anyways. I'm not sure if you can do it without the Task Force Barrel, but most likely you're going to need the Task Force Barrel because it does increase the multipliers as well. So yeah, best bet, you might want to use the Task Force Barrel if you do want a 2-shot. And again, like I said, for the Man of War, since the damage is already high and there's no attachments to increase the damage, it's just naturally going to 2-shot to the head. Just enough. I think it's like 50.2 or something, you know. So like, it's barely enough to 2-shot to the head. But you could only do it within the first range. And keep in mind, the first range does extend pretty far. I think up to like, what, over 20 meters. So you're going to be able to 2-shot from a pretty sizable range. So I know some people have a bit of a problem with changes like this. A lot of people probably believe that, you know, they shouldn't have changed it, especially the DRH, given that it's getting a lot of attention recently with the OTM mag. In fact, a lot of pro teams actually want the OTM attachment to be banned. And at first, I didn't really see the reason why, given that you could still 3-shot pretty far without the OTM mag. The only difference was the bullet impact increase, and that was basically it. But now I'm pretty certain that they're definitely going to ban it now, since it can now 2-shot to the head. So yeah, I didn't really think it needed a change like that. But as for the Man of War and the EM2, given that they do have slower fire rates, I've always kind of wanted them to 2-shot to the head. And keep in mind, it's never really a good thing when you're not rewarded for being more accurate, and that's been the case for the EM2 and the Man of War, since like you could just land all 3 shots to the head and it won't even make a difference. So having yourself get rewarded with a 2-shot kill for being accurate is actually a good thing, I think. So now that the 3-shot part is over with, now let's get to the changes individually now. So now we move on to the Grosa. So I know a lot of people didn't look at this gun with any favor, given that it has like a crazy amount of horizontal recoil. But good news, they actually reduced horizontal recoil, but unfortunately it came at the cost of increasing vertical recoil. Of course, they weren't really specific by how much they increased the vertical recoil. That's something that we, I guess, have to test out in the training room or something to really see how much it changed. But yeah, anything that reduces the horizontal recoil will be fine, and it will make it a lot more accurate. So now we move on to the Echo. This is a change only for BR. The damage profile was reduced from 21, 17, 15, 13 to 21, 16, 12, and 9. So they did add an extra range. So the damage range profile for the M13 in Battle Royale did get increased from 19 meters to 40 meters to 22 meters to 40 meters. So basically, you're going to have a little bit more damage, you know, in longer ranges. Of course, this might be more effective if you have like a loadout. So yeah, a pretty decent change, I would say. So now we move on to the operator skills slash score streak section. So the misdirection device did get increased radius. As for the Tempest, they removed the charge up before firing. Oh my god. I didn't even look at that, but that actually sounds very toxic. So they also reduced the energy required by 20%. So basically, you're going to unlock this thing a lot quicker. I'm actually kind of interested to use it now. I never really used the Tempest ever, but now reading it like thoroughly, oh my god. So anyways, the Swarm got increased cost, so now it's going to cost 1,280 points instead of 1,220. For the Stealth Chopper, they increased the cost as well, so now it's going to need like 80 extra points to unlock. And for the Cluster Strike, they reduced the duration from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. And finally, we go to the perks. So the Recon has been increased for its radius, so now when you kill an enemy, the detection range will be a little bit bigger. And as for attack mass, they reduced the tactical duration by 70%. It used to be 60%. So now I'm assuming that if you're getting flashed, it's going to be a lot more effective if you do have this perk on. So now that all the patch notes has finally been uncovered and discussed, I do want to give some final thoughts as well. So first off, I do want to talk about the sniper changes. So the LW3 Tundra, the way that they modified it for next season doesn't really seem like it's really the way to go. My personal take was that maybe for the barrels that increase the fire rate, maybe you could, you know, decrease some of the multipliers, making it a little bit harder for you to actually one-shot, specifically with the Hammer Forge barrel. I think as good as it is to shoot fast, I think it's a little bit too rewarding with zero downsides. And buffing the other snipers such as the Outlaw, the DLQ, as well as the Koshka really doesn't also seem to be the way to go. I mean, really, all you have to do is just nerf the Tundra and everything else should remain untouched. As for the R-Tec, the empty reload is always like a welcoming change. I know it's not really used that often, so that's why I say it's welcoming. But buffing the snipers to catch up to the LW3 Tundra is just going to make the game a lot more toxic and just have more people revolve, or I guess be more dependent on snipers. And keep in mind, you guys already know my take, snipers don't really take a lot of skill to use, and there's not really a lot of punishments, especially when it comes to flinch, unless you're getting hit by maybe a Man of War or an Odin. As for changes such as the stopping power reload buff for the Type 25, of course, that is a pretty good change. I would say it's actually something that it needed, given that a lot of weapons are way above that gun already. So having something like that might actually entice a lot more players to use the gun. And I know a lot of people would rather just use the 46 or the 42 round fast reload, but you know, extending the magazine for the stopping power was actually the right way to go, given how the game is right now. So now on the subject on the 3-shot weapons now having the 2-shot capability. So the DRH, I'm a little bit torn on because, of course, the OTM mag has been something that's been kind of like controversial. A lot of people have been wanting it to get banned or nerfed. And now that's going to have the 2-shot capability, they probably could have met people halfway by maybe adding a new range that only lets you like 2-shot from a limited range, like maybe up to like 8 to 10 meters or something like that, but not to the point where it's like you could still like 2-shot up to 40 meters. I think that's a little bit too unfair. With the EM2, I'm a little indifferent about it. I don't really care because it does come with the requirement of having to use the Task Force barrel, but not like it comes at a huge cost because, I mean, there's no recoil with the gun anyways. So yeah, it's not really going to be a problem. But as for the Man of War, I mean, the range still is pretty short. I mean, you're going to probably have to use like a Ranger, Marksman, or even a large suppressor to even have some good range with it anyway. So having a 2-shot benefit does help. And especially it does with, like, I guess, you know, shooting at longer ranges beyond the first range. Also, I know some of you guys might bring up the ASM-10, given that's also a 3-shot weapon. The AK-47, of course, it's already has that 2-shot capability anyways, but when it comes to the ASM-10, they probably most likely didn't add that 2-shot benefit, mainly because it has the Branson barrel that you could use. So if they put that with the Branson barrel, it's probably going to be a little bit too overpowered. But again, of course, they could probably do something in the future where, like, if you use the Branson barrel, they won't have that benefit. But Yeah, that's something that we still have to wait and see what they do with that weapon, because that's going to be the only 3-shot weapon that won't be able to 2-shot, at least in terms of the assault rifle category. As for the other changes, I don't really mind them. I mean, the perks and all that other stuff. I mean, recon wasn't really being used that often, so having a slight change to it is alright. But yeah, in terms of the weapon changes, it could have been done a little bit better, specifically for the snipers, but I mean, I'm always excited for new changes for weapons and can't wait to use them anyways. But anyways, hope you guys have a wonderful day. Make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe for some more COD Mobile content. I'll see you guys next time.